In just 7 days, a thriving relationship can fall apart. How? By forgetting Stoicism, the ancient philosophy that teaches emotional control, resilience, and perspective. Today, we'll explore the story of Sarah and James and how their relationship crumbled in 1 week after they let go of their Stoic principles. At the heart of their bond, Sarah and James had always embraced the core teachings of Stoicism: emotional regulation, open communication, and the power of self-reflection. These principles gave their relationship a solid foundation. But when they let go of these practices, things quickly began to unravel. This video will examine how neglecting Stoic practices can lead to the breakdown of a relationship. We'll explore the importance of emotional regulation, the role of clear communication, and how self-reflection can either strengthen or weaken the connection between two people. Let's dive into their story and uncover the lessons that lie within. Sarah and James had always been deeply committed to Stoicism, using its teachings to guide their lives and strengthen their relationship. Both believed in the power of emotional control, seeing it as the key to navigating life's inevitable challenges with grace and resilience. Their shared Stoic values shaped every aspect of their partnership, from how they communicated to how they handled disagreements. When conflicts arose, they approached them with patience and understanding, never letting emotions cloud their judgment. Rather than escalating an argument, they took time to reflect, considering the other's perspective before responding. Communication was always clear and grounded in reason, with no room for assumptions or misinterpretations. They also shared a deep focus on gratitude, never taking each other for granted. Small acts of kindness, whether it was making a cup of tea or leaving a thoughtful note, were always appreciated. Together, they prioritized resilience and virtue, supporting each other in their individual pursuits while growing stronger as a couple. Their relationship was a testament to the power of Stoicism. It was stable, healthy, and built on a foundation of shared values that allowed them to face life's ups and downs with mutual respect and calm. By day 1, the first signs of trouble began to creep in. James had been under immense pressure at work, facing tight deadlines and demanding projects. Sarah, on the other hand, was dealing with family issues that had been weighing heavily on her mind. Both tried to carry on as usual, but the stress of their external circumstances began to seep into their relationship. It wasn't long before they started neglecting their Stoic habits. In the past, they would have taken a moment to pause, reflect, and respond thoughtfully. But now, stress was clouding their judgment. James, exhausted from work, snapped when Sarah asked him a simple question about dinner plans. "Why do you always do this when I'm busy?" he shot back, frustration evident in his voice. Sarah, overwhelmed by her family situation, felt the sting of his words and reacted impulsively. "You think your work is the only thing that matters?" she retorted, her tone sharp. In the past, they would have taken a step back, both choosing patience and understanding. But now the arguments that used to be resolved calmly began to escalate. Rather than focusing on their internal responses, they allowed their external stressors to dictate their actions. By day 2, their minor disagreements started feeling more intense, fueled by a lack of emotional control. They were quick to blame each other instead of looking inward, forgetting the Stoic practice of self-reflection. The usual harmony was giving way to frustration and resentment. Neither realized how quickly their relationship was being affected by the very principles that had once kept it strong. By day 3, the breakdown in Sarah and James's relationship intensified. What had started as small signs of tension now spiraled into emotional outbursts and heightened conflict. Both were reacting from a place of ego rather than reason, allowing their stress and frustrations to dictate their actions. James, feeling overwhelmed by work, began to withdraw emotionally. He felt that Sarah didn't understand the pressure he was under, and that despite their past support, she was now just another source of stress. "You don't get it," he said one evening, his voice distant. "All you do is talk about your family problems, but I can't even get a minute to breathe." His words stung, but rather than considering his tone or the root of his frustration, Sarah took it personally. In response, Sarah felt unsupported. She had hoped that James, with all his Stoic discipline, would be the one person who could listen and provide comfort. But now, every attempt to express herself seemed to trigger his defensiveness. "I'm just trying to talk to you, but you're too busy being mad at the world to hear me," she snapped in frustration. Neither of them stopped to reflect before responding, breaking the Stoic principle of pausing before speaking. Their once calm exchanges were now replaced by impulsive, hurtful remarks. Sarah's attempt to connect turned into a verbal battle, while James's exhaustion led him to shut down, unable to articulate his feelings without lashing out. Miscommunications grew more frequent. A question from Sarah about James's weekend plans turned into an argument about who was more stressed. A casual comment about needing space was interpreted as rejection, further deepening their emotional detachment. The real issues, their inability to communicate openly and their failure to manage their emotions, remained unaddressed. They began to imagine the worst in each other, fueled by their anxieties and frustrations. Instead of facing the reality of their struggles together, they allowed their minds to run wild with worst-case scenarios. This shift highlighted a critical Stoic lesson they had ignored. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, as Seneca once said. By assuming the worst in each other, Sarah and James were suffering from imagined fears and misunderstandings, rather than confronting the real issues that needed their attention. The distance between them grew as they focused on imaginary slights instead of finding common ground. By day 6, the emotional chaos reached its peak. The smallest issue, something trivial, set off the final explosion. James came home late from work, his mood darkened by another frustrating day. Sarah, still reeling from the unresolved tension between them, had prepared a quiet dinner, hoping for some peace. But when James noticed the meal was cold, he erupted. "Why can't you ever just be considerate?" he shouted, his anger flaring. "I've been working my ass off all week, and this is how you treat me? Like I don't matter?" His outburst was fueled by exhaustion and frustration, completely disregarding the Stoic principle of controlling emotions. Instead of reflecting on what was within his power, the choice to respond calmly, he allowed his anger to dictate the situation. Sarah, already feeling emotionally drained, snapped in return. "You think I'm the problem here? You've been distant for days and now you're angry over dinner." Rather than pausing to understand James's perspective or practicing self-restraint, Sarah's own emotional explosion turned the conversation into a personal attack. The calm, reflective communication that had once been their foundation was now entirely absent. Neither of them embodied the Stoic virtues they once cherished: forgiveness, compassion, or self-awareness. There was no room for understanding, just a destructive cycle of blame and frustration. In that moment, Sarah realized how emotionally drained she had become and how unsupported she felt. The realization hit hard. She couldn't keep going down this path. "I need a break," Sarah said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "I can't do this anymore, James." She walked away, the decision final. The relationship, once built on shared Stoic principles, had unraveled, leaving both of them in the wake of their own emotional chaos. In the days that followed the breakup, both Sarah and James took time to reflect on what went wrong. James, sitting alone in his apartment, revisited the Stoic texts that had once guided his life. He realized how far he had strayed from his practice of emotional control. Frustration and anger had dictated his actions, overshadowing the Stoic principle of keeping his emotions in check. He had let external stress consume him rather than focusing on what was within his power. His response. Sarah, in the quiet of her own space, reflected on her role in the breakdown. She, too, had abandoned the Stoic practice of understanding. Instead of pausing to reflect, she had reacted impulsively, letting her emotions take over. The self-awareness and patience she once relied on had been replaced with frustration and defensiveness. She realized that she had failed to embody the very virtues that had once brought them together. Both turned to their Stoic readings, searching for the self-control they had lost. Through their reflection, they came to a powerful realization. The decline of their relationship wasn't solely due to external stresses. It was the result of abandoning the Stoic principles that had once been their foundation. They understood now that true strength in relationships comes from inner control and self-awareness. The core mistakes Sarah and James made were rooted in their abandonment of key Stoic principles. First, they lost emotional control. Both allowed negative emotions, frustration, anger, and defensiveness, to dictate their actions, instead of pausing to reflect and choose a measured response. Second, they failed to practice mindfulness. Rather than taking a moment to consider their thoughts and feelings before reacting, they acted impulsively, escalating conflicts instead of resolving them. Third, self-awareness was ignored. They stopped considering how their reactions affected each other, focusing only on their own stress and emotions. This lack of empathy created a widening emotional gap between them. Finally, they prioritized external pressures over internal resilience. James and Sarah let external stresses like work and family issues dictate their emotional states, neglecting the Stoic principle of focusing on what's within their control. These missteps led to the slow unraveling of their once solid relationship as they lost the very virtues that had made it strong. The importance of Stoicism in relationships. The story of Sarah and James teaches a powerful lesson. Practicing Stoicism is crucial for the long-term success of any relationship. Emotional control, resilience, and understanding aren't just for personal growth. They are essential for creating lasting, harmonious connections with others. Without these core Stoic virtues, even the strongest relationships can begin to erode. Stoicism requires daily practice, not just in solitude, but within relationships. It's about consistently embodying emotional control, clear communication, and self-reflection, even in the face of stress. Relationships thrive on mutual respect and understanding, values that Stoicism fosters. When Sarah and James let go of their Stoic practices, their emotional chaos overtook their relationship. The lesson here is clear. When you forget to control your emotions and neglect Stoic principles, even love can fade away in 7 days. Sarah and James's story highlights how neglecting Stoicism can have a devastating impact on emotional health and relationships. Through their journey, we see how the loss of emotional control, reflection, and empathy led to the breakdown of their connection. Now, I encourage you to reflect on your own relationships. Are you practicing Stoic virtues, emotional control, patience, and self-awareness? Take a moment to think about how Stoicism could strengthen your bonds. Share your experiences with Stoicism and relationships in the comments below. And remember, if you want to make your relationship stronger, it starts with you. Practice Stoicism today and see the difference it makes in how you connect with others.